approval for big banks seeking to repay bailout money could start in early June. Several of the country's 19 largest banks that participated in the recent stress test are interested in repaying the money they received from the government's $700 billion bailout fund. And the 10 banks that were found to need more capital after the stress test have until June the 8th now to develop such a plan and have it approved by regulators. Just some of the money talk that we're going to mention today with Chris Markowski, the watchdog on Wall Street. Talking about this TARP money, more banks, some banks want to repay earlier. What's the advantage to them of wanting to repay this TARP money?
The strings. The strings are going to be cut.
They don't want the government hands in there?
They don't want the government hands in there. And it's also there, you know, there's a little bit of a stigma attached to having got money from the government in regards to what you're going to be doing down the road. It's going to allow them once again to kind of open things up and get involved in various different areas of business, which they might not be so inclined to do when the government does have their fingers involved with this. Not to mention the fact you're going to also, it's a prestige factor too. We no longer are involved with TARP. You're going to drive more business in your direction. It's a marketing type of a thing. The government's being somewhat cautious in regards to how to get this money back. The interesting thing is, part of the TARP, and most people don't even understand this. We've discussed this here. We're making money as taxpayers on the TARP money that went to the banks. We're getting paid a nice interest rate on this.
Certainly, yeah.
Unlike the automakers just defaulted on their part. They're not going to pay that back. But there's also warrants attached to this deal, meaning that the government has a right to purchase common shares down the road. Now, the various different banks want to buy that back as well because they don't want to have to, in essence, the government come back down the road and exercise these warrants and then have major ownership in the banks.
Does this mean that the banks are really healthy again, or does it mean they just would prefer not to have the government involved?
One of the best signs of health, like you go to a doctor, the doctor's going to take your pulse, he's going to take your blood pressure, various other different things, is the LIBOR rate, which is the rate that banks basically lend to each other overnight, and and that rate once again dropped a lot over the past, today dropped precipitously, but over the past several weeks it's really gone down to very, very low levels. That's a sign that banks once again trust one another and are willing to do business with one another and have no fear in lending to one another. That rate went through the roof last fall, where we got to almost like credit Armageddon, which kind of set off this whole problem.
You said there was some late news today concerning GM and the auto industry?
Yeah, it was actually right before we came in here. There's been some news leaking in regards to how the General Motors inevitable bankruptcy is going to happen.
Because we haven't heard anything about that in, well, a week now or so.
Well, we talked about the 1,100 dealerships that are going out, and that's been all over the news. Remember when Oldsmobile went out of business, if you recall, GM had to pay over $1 billion to the various different dealers because of the state laws in dealerships. In order for them to get out from underneath those dealer contracts and shut these 1,100 dealerships, they're going to have to go into bankruptcy. There is an interesting structure, but once again, the government is taking they're going to be the controlling interest. They want to take control of all the good parts of General Motors, and they say they want to sell it off later. But once again, you've got the unions part ownership in this, secured creditors are going to have part ownership in this. The only good thing is it looks like the secured creditors will get paid back in full, but we, the taxpayers, we're out of luck. That TARP money's gone.
Wow. Well, what does it mean for consumers if the government takes over GM? They've already eliminated Pontiac, and I would assume that people can get some good deals on Pontiacs if they want to buy them now. What does it mean to, the guy down the street?
Well, I think today, Barack Obama came out today and he gave his speech and he pushed forward the Bush numbers from 2020 to 2016 in regards to the CAFE standards. Government's always been involved in the auto industry and dictating based upon CAFE standards the types of cars that they're going to be making. They've just pushed this number up to some degree. I don't know. I think maybe people might be a little bit more cautious, or, it depends on how much they're going to discount these cars. My concern is that you're gonna have these really tiny cars on the road. Is the technology there? We're gonna be able to put these things out there. We're gonna be on the road in these smart cars going against these 18-wheelers. We'll see what happens.
It's a little intimidating on the road. That's true. All right, Chris, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
As always, appreciate it.